I've got this whiteboard, I should start using it for little demonstrations actually. So anyway, so you've got your brake line, so you've got your brake line, the fluid goes in to the master cylinder, and obviously it has to return back to the master cylinder and back round again, so back round again, and you know, all the air can be in here, but what you want to do is make sure that the fluid... Oh God, it's disgusting. Sorry. Hey, how are you doing? Do you have problems with your rear brake, your front brake, or your brakes on your car, where your hydraulic brake is binding or it's sticking on? It seems to be okay when you first set off, and after a few miles or a few laps, whatever you're doing, the brake seems to seize and stay on, and you can't do anything about it. Have you put a new seal kit in there? Have you changed the fluid? Have you changed the hoses, but still no joy? Well, if that's the case, I'm just going to show you why. Let's take a look. I'm going to use this 1999 KX250 as a perfect example because it has that problem, okay? The rear brake is sticking on. The front brakes are fine. It was doing that when I got it. I purchased it from a guy who's restored the bike, or a partial restoration. It's from California, and the bike was stood outside for decades, and the original plastic and seat, everything's faded and burnt away in that California sunshine. So the brakes, obviously the fluid inside there was shot. It was disgusting. He's bled the brakes and they got the brakes working, but he can't unstick the front one, and the rear one's intermittent, okay? So what I've done, I've replaced a master cylinder on the front, because I don't like the master cylinders on these anyway. I had a spare one, so I replaced that, put new pads in the front and hose, etc. And that's cured that problem. It's working fine now. The rear brake just seemed to want to bleed up, and it was felt fine. So I took the bike to the track, did a couple of laps around the track, and it came to a stop. It lost power, and the rear brake was just locked on. So I limped back to the paddock with it, and when I got there, you could not move that wheel for love or money. Okay, it was solid. So basically all I had to do was release the pressure from the hose with the on the master cylinder, and the brake freed off. All right. So I bled the brake at the track. I was totally unable to get that brake working again. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to show you. We're going to go over to the bench. I'm going to show you what the problem actually is, and I can tackle the bench and have a look. So here we've got the master cylinder from the KX250. This is the one out of the bike, and I'm going to strip this in a minute and have a look inside it and have a look at this problem. I've got here, just for demonstration purposes, sorry, a Brembo master cylinder. I don't know what bike that is off. It's just been in the garage for a long time. So the problems you're facing with this, let's say your brakes are binding on, you've changed the fluid, you go out riding again, you set off on your road bike, sports bike, whichever, and after a few miles the bike just seems heavy and sluggish, and you notice that your brake is binding, so the bike's stiff to push, it's heavy to push, feels like a ZX750 to push. It's heavy because your brake's sticking on, but when the bike cools down and you've left it stood for a while, it feels nice and free to push, okay? So obviously you've got a brake binding problem. The worst case scenario is you just come to a complete stop, or the rear brake skids, something like that. Your dirt bike, just the same symptoms, okay? And what you may have done is replace the brake pads, the rear slave cylinder kit. You might have put yourself some new O-ring seals in there. You may have put a braided hose on, and this problem still is there. You may have put, like I said, a new seal kit in here. The problem's still there. What is happening? Well, inside here, I'll take one of these apart and show you first of all. Okay, excuse me for a moment while I wrestle with this. Or maybe not. Absolutely disgusting. Right, let's take a look. Get this O-ring out of there. So it's absolutely disgusting in there, isn't it? All this crap in here. This is a dirt bike, and no hydraulic brake should look like this inside, to be honest with you. But it's been stood for a long time, and obviously just bleeding the brakes has not got all this crap out of there. But you see these two holes here. So we've got our compression and our return. So when you when this is attached to the bike and your fluid starts to drip into the cylinder itself, it will go through that hole there. All right, it'll go through that hole there. And when you work your brake, your seal will move past this hole and obviously past this one to compress it. Then on the return, as it's moving back this way, it should allow fluid or suction for that fluid to come back into the reservoir, right? Which should hopefully draw back your pad slightly. But if this hole here is blocked in any way, if it's blocked totally, your brakes will lock up. If it's partially blocked, then your brakes will obviously start to bind, all right? So most people don't realise this, but that hole there is tiny. That hole's bigger than that one, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to clear this out, okay? So this hole here, the compression, is quite a large hole, and it takes a lot of crap to block that up, okay? But you can just see this here, the return. It's a tiny little pinhole in there. I can just see that. It looks like it's clear now, but we'll get a pin in there and get some compressed air down it and try and make sure it's thoroughly clear. But that tiny little hole there, you can just see how small that is, look. So it doesn't take much to block that up. Okay, a tiny hole like that. What I'm going to do now is get the whole thing stripped apart, because I do have a seal kit anyway. I'm going to replace this. So we'll get it stripped apart and we'll test it, see if it works. Right, just to diagnose this problem further, if you have it, okay, you should be able to blow air down there. Now the problem is when you take your rear slave cylinder off the bike and you try to compress those pads, but they just will not go. That will show you that you have this problem, okay? If you have to put tons of effort in to get those pads to move back, then it means that you have that problem with the blockage in here. Or it could be in your slave cylinder, actually. You could have a blocked hole in there, but the holes inside your slave are usually a lot greater in size than the ones in your master cylinder, okay? Right, what I'm going to do now is give this a damn good clean out, okay? It's quite a mess and I don't want it to go back on the bike like that. I'll get the bore cleaned out in there, it's disgusting. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to watch me scrub this to death, so I'm going to be back in a little while, alright? See you in a bit. Alright, so that's all nice and clean now, nice and shiny. I've cleaned all these components up here. Got that with a seal kit. That's all clean. I've put new seals on there. I've not really done a video or recorded myself fitting these seals. It's quite simple. You just cut the old ones off or rip them off and then put new ones on there. There's no, don't need a tutorial on that. Anyway, we're going to get the seal kit in there and build it up together and see if we're working. So I'm just giving this a slight tap to make sure that the circular has got into the groove there. Get into the groove. Because it is a bit stiff to push down as this part. So giving it a little tap will ensure that goes to where it needs to be. Right then, brake bleeding, the part I absolutely despise because it's a messy job, or it can be messy. So I've kept this hose from the rear slave cylinder vertical throughout this process. I don't want to end up having air trapped in it anywhere. There's no air in that. I don't want to be air trapped in it anywhere, so I'm going to push the whole damn thing out and strip it apart. So it's just to save me time, really. Okay. I've topped up the master cylinder. I've topped it up with a little bit of fluid in there and just give it a quick press, carefully to get any air out of that. There is going to be air in this once we assemble it, but this is just to merely make life a little bit easier for me. So, excuse me if I'm getting in the way. Give this a little bit of a nip up. I won't be able to get it too tight, it's not attached to the bike. Right, so that's vertical now, so any air that's trapped in here will be lingering around this point here. So what I'm going to do is just turn that on its arse a little bit, just for the fluid that's inside that cylinder to bleed into there. Everyone's got their own way of doing these, but this is my favourite way. Right, this is really awkward to film, so I'll do the best I can. There will be air trapped inside here. I've kept this hose upright the whole time, so any fluid that's left in there will be sat underneath all that air. The air will be gathering up in here. What I need to do is just twist this around a little, just to let it escape. I'm trying to get it all to escape up here without ripping this hose. So if I give it a little bit of a press now, let's see if we can get you over the top here. What I'm trying to do is bleed the air out of the master cylinder. I don't want it to go into the caliper. Alright, so I'm just going to give this a little press and you should see some air rising. See that? Little air rising, look. Only a slight press. Give it a few seconds. And that is pushing the air out of the master cylinder first. It's getting quite stiff to push, is that now? You'll be surprised how much air is actually in it. So what I want to do, again I don't want to damage this hose, I'm just going to turn this vertical, tilt it, so any air left inside that hose or the banjo bolt there, it helps rise up into the cylinder. Again, please excuse the focus, it's not good, is it? So I want it to kind of rise up to the back of the cylinder. Okay, and then we'll hold him down like that. See if anything else comes out. Can't grip it, it's actually quite stiff now to press. Come on, you bastard. There we go, air's coming out of there, look. Already. There we go. That's getting really stiff to compress, is that? So if you think about holding this vertical, any air bubbles will be trapped inside a cylinder. They will try and make their way out through this hole in here. And you want to keep this vertical really, so just to maneuver it, let the air get out of there. You can, I'm doing this without the vacuum bleeder, which will draw the fluid and air all the way through, but Not everyone's got a vacuum bleeder, so I'm just going to demonstrate to you the effect of this. So that is really stiff. I can't push that anymore. I will have to mount this on the bike now and just give it another final bleed through, I think. Very stiff, that. Alright, so I think I've got all the air, or most of the air, out of the master cylinder now. Again, I'm going to keep working it. I can barely push that. Right, so I'm going to mount this on the bike. I think I'm done here, and we'll see what we've got. Okay, so we're all assembled and there's some nice compression there now. You can feel it the moment I turn that wheel, but I do think there's still some air trapped in there. So what I'm going to do, I've got most of it out, or if not all of it out of the master cylinder, but there still can be air trapped inside there. And because this is quite stiff to push with my bare hands now, what I'm going to do is remove the rear brake caliper and try to elevate it so I can get the air coming out of that. The other thing is as well, also I want to check that this is returning, so I'm going to take when I take this off the rear sleigh cylinder, I want to be able to compress those pistons, make sure it pushes the fluid back into here, then we know we're working. Okay, like I said before, if you cannot push those pistons back, and I mean right back, into the caliper, then you've obviously got a blockage in here, or blockage somewhere along here. All right, it usually is in here, so let's get that off and we'll crack on. It's already a good sign that these pads come straight out. And that pushes right back in there, all the way. See the fluid rising in the cylinder as well. Usually if you're lucky, you can push some excess air back into the cylinder. Okay, so I think that is working fine now. Before we weren't able to do that before. This was absolutely rock solid, so I'm quite confident this brake is going to be working. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to elevate this up high and give this bleed screw here a little bit of a twist, letting the air out if there's any in the system. Okay. Right, so I'm just trying to give you a good camera angle so I can demonstrate what I'm doing. It's a little bit difficult. I wouldn't usually do it like this. I'm in a bit of a stress position. So what I'm doing is giving the lever a press. Just a few little air bubbles pop out of there, just as you would with the caliper attached. Give it a few pumps and then crack off the bleed screw. Watch the air rise, link it back up. It doesn't matter if this comes out. I'm gripping it with my fingers, so I'm trying to keep it held in. I want to try and make sure I can push that back in there. Okay, so I've got this upright vertically, so any air that's still in here will rise up now to the cylinder and obviously you've got to look at where everything's pointing, so if any air gets into here, it will then rise up into here. So you need to hold this upright once again for the air to rise up to there, right? It doesn't automatically just run down the hose and straight out the bleed screw, so you need to hold it at the correct angle for the air to escape. But see if there's any inside there. Might have got it all out now. Ooh, how stiff is that? There we go. See all that? Hopefully you saw that. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do now is mount this back on the bike and see if it's got good compression in it, okay? When you do crack these bleed screws off, you can get an instant rush of air which has come from behind the thread, so sometimes you might feel that you've got air still inside this cylinder, but it's actually just coming from those threads there. It rises up, so don't be fooled by that, okay? Yeah, so I'm going to mount this back on the bike now, and I'll probably stick this pipe on and give it another little bleed, which is all in situ, and then we should be done, okay? So I'm just giving this a final purge now, just to make sure we don't have any more air in it. And again, I am seeing little bits of tiny air bubbles here. Again, it's just from what's around the threads when you first crack it open. What you can do is apply pressure, then release it, and it does help keep that away. So it's quite clear as that. Keeping an eye on my fluid. I do have a vacuum bleeder, but not everybody has one, so just doing it the old way. That feels fantastic. Alright. Nice and solid that. You can actually feel it as soon as you apply a slight bit of pressure. You can feel it coming along. Just like that. Yeah, I think that's it now. I'm going to get that bleed kit removed now and give the whole thing a damn clean up and the floor clean up and pack all the tools away, and it should be good to go. I've got a little bit of welding to do on the exhaust, and I put the exhaust on, get the fluids into it, and the bike should be ready to go, hopefully for the weekend. So I'm praying for good weather this weekend. I can get out on the KX, and I will get my GoPros on. What I want to do is make sure that the bike runs right first. Make sure I have no problems with it. That way I can make a nice little video of what it feels like to ride a 1999 KX250. So I'm so excited. Anyway, so I'll do a quick recap on what we've done with the Brake Master, okay? Right, okay, so I've done a nice little illustration of your braking system, okay, with a little cutaway. Pretend this is hollow, right? So we've got our piston, we've got our bleed screw there, our hose, which comes all the way down here, our reservoir, fluid reservoir, and the piston, which will be in here. And these are the two seals. So you've got one seal at rest, the brake, it will sit just behind this hole here. So looking where these two seals sit, you need to also get, with the braking system, get your free play set correctly, because if you've got, if you're spongy, most people will tighten up the free play a little bit to move that lever, move the lever out, so it feels a little bit firmer, the brake. And what you're doing is you're compressing it, so you're moving this seal, this one, slightly, and covering this hole. So that can cause, when it gets hot, your bike gets hot, your brake fluid starts to warm up, or pumping it, pressure will build up in there, and that will eventually cause your brakes to bind, okay? This thing happens with hydraulic clutches, where people don't adjust the free play correctly on the lever. It's not so much with the rear, but on hydraulic clutches as well. Let's talk, people change levers on them, and lever perches have a different position for where the pin meets the piston. Okay, standard ones are always the best. I usually say I'll get a well-known brand which is engineered correctly, because if that free play, if this is not in the correct position at rest, your piston, you will have problems with your clutch dragging, or your clutch slipping, or your brake dragging, brake slipping, etc. So brake slipping. So anyway, so this is your two holes, your small one, your large one, the small one being the return. So what's going to happen here is, when you compress your brake, these seals move forward, okay? This rear one will cover this hole, and leaving this one open. This forward one will compress the fluid and push it down towards a piston, all right? And when you release it, when you release the brake, they will go back into that position again, where they are at rest position. So that will then create a little bit of suction, pulling your piston back into the caliper and the fluid back, and releasing all that pressure back into the reservoir again. Okay, so when you're bleeding your brakes and you have the brakes are sponging, you might seem to bleed the brakes. There's no air coming back out of that hose what you put on there, but yet they still feel spongy. These are the problems that you can have. You think about that. The air is always going to want to go, pardon me, my pen is running out, is always want to go vertical, okay? It's going to want to rise to the top, whatever position you have that in. So if you have a little bit of air, you can get air trapped in here, get air trapped in there, and you can even get air trapped sometimes in your hoses, depending on what position they are in. You can get air trapped here, in where your piston is, and you can, at the same time, you can compress it and push fluid out, but it will work past this air. This air bubble may stay in there, and the fluid will just push past it simply. Okay, so what you need to do sometimes is, or most of the time, is angle your hoses, angle your calipers, get everything angled up right, because you want really that air to travel down this tube here and then go through your bleed valve, whichever position that is in. All right, these I say are always better off at the top like that. I don't know why they put them on the sides, but you can get also bleed screws for which attached to, I think I've got one somewhere. You can get bleed screws which attach to the top of the banjo bolts there, which are pretty good. That way you can bleed your cylinders off, make it easier. But that's how it works simply. So fluid in there, and just pay attention next time you're bleeding your brakes or clutch, whichever. Make sure you angle things, move things around, so that you'll get that air to work its way out, and give it some time as well. It can work slowly, okay? It doesn't always rush up to the highest point. So that's how it works. Hope that's a good illustration. Okay, thank you. And that concludes my little lesson in brake bleeding in brakes. Okay, I seem to have done a lot of brakes this year. So I'm going to get the bike out when we have a nice day, get the GoPro on it. Hopefully that should be everything it needs, and I shouldn't have any problems with it. I'm going to do a little video, see what I'm like on the old two-stroke. Okay, I'm going to be racing it next year at Farley Castle. I did go to World Vets this year on the four-stroke. I raced World Vets at Farley, but I had such a bad time, I just did not record at all. We got down there the Friday and the Saturday, it rained all day, so my GoPro footage was just terrible. And the Sunday, I had a crash on the bike, a couple of crashes actually. I had a crash on the bike, it was pretty shit. So the bars were bent, stuff like that. The front wheel was to one side. I couldn't do any recording, so it was a little bit of a letdown for me. So next year I'm going to go to Farley, and hopefully I'll be improved on the KX250, and I'll have a little better time. I'm going to do a full video that weekend. Looking forward to it already. Got a long wait, but I've not done any recording this year at all. No superbike stuff, nothing like that. I did some work on, if you notice in there, the Ducati 916's gone. It's actually here, it's actually up there in my attic in pieces. The engine's in there. I have started stripping it and recording some footage with that. But I paused because we sold some of the bikes, you see. I was going to do an update video about what's been happening, but some things are quite personal, and we've had a few tragedies this year. Some things happened which is not very nice. We lost our dog as well, Rambo. Very unexpectedly, he became very ill whilst at a vet's, so there's a little bit of an investigation ongoing there. and it's upstairs quite dearly. But we've also had our baby boy this year. If you watched my earlier video, or when we went to Portsmouth, I posted that video in August when we went to Portsmouth on our wedding anniversary. You'll see little Michael on there. He's in the house right now. He's 3 months old now, just over 3 months, and he started teething, so he's a little bit up and down at night. Anyway, still got some battery in my camera here. I keep getting warnings saying battery low warning. So we've got the ZX, we've got the R1, we've got the RSV Melee. The RS125 has gone. We've sold that. I know I said I was going to do some restoration work on the RS125, but you know, I've been kind of put off superbikes this year. There's been a lot of tragedies, road tragedies. Even those one last night, I believe. There've been so many bikers being killed on the roads around our area. And you know what? It's put me off riding, to be honest with you. I love doing motocross. It's way safer. I know I don't want to ride around like an idiot. I don't want to be speeding and stuff like that. I'd rather come back here in one piece. I will be keeping my Melee. That's going to be sold. The ZX is going to be sold, but I will be keeping the Melee. My wife's giving up road biking for the time being. We'll see what we're like in another year or so, a couple of years. But I don't want to sell my Melee. I love that bike, even though I'm not riding it. I just love looking at it. It's a beautiful machine. Plus, I've done some full suspension rebuild on this as well. Replace ignition coils and a service, so a new back tyre, sprockets, so chain and all that. I'm going to get it MOT this week, and I do want to get back out on that, take it for a little ride. But I know that I can ride safely. I'm quite alert to what's going on the roads. But you know what? There seems to be this trend with roads in England at the moment, which I've seen is the blind bend trend, where people seem to be going on the opposite side of the road round blind bends, or speeding around blind bends, hill crests, stuff like that. And you must be absolutely mad if that's something that you do. But it's so lethal, and you just don't know what's coming. I've gone round some bends in the van, and I found bikers on the opposite side of the road. So it's quite a dangerous place to be as a roads at the moment. Right, so I've got 5% battery left, so I'm going to leave it here, knock it on the head, a little update and a little bit of a brake service. Okay, so I will be back. I'm not going to give up YouTube. I don't want to but it's been pretty tough this year. Last few years have been tough. But you know, we're all human. We all have problems. We all have happy times. And we're just trying to get a little bit square with some things. So things will be slow, but I am not going anywhere. I do enjoy making videos and stuff, and helping people out. Anyway, right, I'm going to get off because I've got 3% battery. It's going to die. But thank you for watching, if you've been watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you soon out on the KX maybe. Okay, all right, see you later.